Stigmatization around mental health still exists. In the last several years, there's been an uptick in shared treatment experiences, specifically for those who were in treatment as an adolescent over the last 30 years. As a consultant working with young adults only, it's been unsettling to hear about the horrific experiences that some folks have described. As someone trained as a counselor, we were taught to do no harm. I lead with this for each client I work with. While recording this special parent series, over the last year, several parents have suggested I interview their young adults. The special parent series is noted as being just that. It's about the parent perspective only. I'm now branching out to launch the former participant series, extending the opportunity for former participants who feel comfortable talking about their journey, doing so on this podcast. No topic is off limits, and not all stories are positive. This series is meant to be honest, transparent, and real for each individual's experience through the treatment continuum. Please note that this special former participant series is the adult's perspective of their treatment experience during adolescence or as a young adult. This is merely one perspective of a single story, and it's important to know that names have been changed for the protection of the interviewee unless they have requested not to do so. These episodes may include details surrounding suicide, self-harm, substance abuse, including overdose, hospitalizations, psychotic episodes, and other traumatic experiences which include parts of the treatment journey. That includes working with consultants, being escorted by a transport company, wilderness therapy, and a residential treatment program. All that is to say, listener discretion is advised. Welcome to an episode with a former participant in treatment.
It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilley.
Hi, and welcome to the show. If you're new here, I'm glad to have you. This podcast was formed to collectively build a bank of stories from normal people sharing their nonlinear paths. Unfortunately, social media paints a narrow picture of what success looks like, so I'm doing my best to spread the news that changing course is common, and you don't have to know what you want to do the rest of your life at 18. If you're a parent worried about your young adult and whether their path is leading them to success, you're in the right place. I'm a therapeutic consultant who works with young adults to connect them with resources that'll help them get back on a better path. So if you're curious, let's chat. You can schedule a free consultation through my website, which you can find a link for in the show notes. Today, my guest is Sam Hayes. Sam has had numerous roles within the behavioral health field, including direct client care, case management, admissions, and business development. Sam draws on personal and professional experience when working with individuals and their families. He firmly believes that everyone should have the opportunity to build a meaningful and purpose-driven life that is guided by a person's strengths and aspirations. I'm not even sure we get to this point in the conversation, but if we don't, it's important to note that Sam holds a bachelor's in business administration and law from Western Carolina University. He's also a certified alcohol and drug counselor in the state of North Carolina. Sam's a hoot to chat with, so let's not wait any longer. Here's Sam. All right, Sam, you're here. Thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Joanna. I'm excited. And, as I just told you at about 5 minutes before this started, I was thinking about what I've got myself into.
I know. You're constantly stretching your comfort zone, which I'm going to hold very carefully in this spot right now as we interview, and I won't interrogate you, I promise. Okay, so let's just jump right in. You are coming on as a guest specifically to talk about being in, as a former treatment participant. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions right out of the gate to kind of get started. And then, we want to know what you're doing now. We want to talk about advice for young adults that you have, especially, some young person that can kind of be in a similar situation that you were in before you got sober. So let's back up the bus. Where did you actually grow up? Let's talk about how the substance use even started from the jump.
Sure. Yeah, so I grew up in the Raleigh-Durham area in North Carolina, mainly in a small town called Hillsborough. I have both my parents were in my household, and I also had an older sister, and she's 7 years older than me. The substance use and mental health struggles for me really started when I was in middle school going into high school. I had some behavioral issues in middle school for sure. I was very rambunctious. I couldn't focus. I would talk back, etc. My mother didn't know what to do with me. She was also a teacher in this middle school. So, that made it pretty difficult for her. Anyways, she ended up taking me to a doctor who prescribed me ADHD medication, stimulants, and that's really where I was introduced to, mood and mind altering substances. Because of some of the side effects that I was having because of the ADHD medication, that same doctor prescribed me benzodiazepines. And when I took my first Klonopin was really when I realized, whoa, like this is really cool. I don't feel anxious. I'm not scared. I feel calm. And so, eventually I started not taking the stimulant and just taking that Klonopin. So that's kind of where it all began.
So we can point our finger at this prescriber. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, kind of. But it was a part of the problem, right? If you think back, like, all right, hold on. Did you really have ADHD, or were you just like a typical middle school boy that's like all over the place? And the simple solution was there's got to be some magic pill that's just going to like get him to lock it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about this really often. And I mean, I'm sure that I have tendencies of ADHD as any normal person would in the culture and society that we currently live in that's full of stimuli. But was that really what I needed at that point? I guess, I'll never know, but I do look back on it. And that's where I, regardless of whether it was a bad decision on the doctor, I look back on it and say, wow, that's when this really started for me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're not going to belabor the point, but clearly that's the beginning of the, like, really the fast track train that you were on. So now all of a sudden you're no longer taking your Adderall. Now you're taking Klonopin, which is a benzo, which we know is highly addictive. So where did it go from there?
Yeah, well, there's a great meme I love, and it's, well, that escalated quickly, which it did. So, by 19, 20 years old, I was actively using heroin and cocaine and benzos. I began doing it IV around that age as well. And, I experienced, all the things that they talk about, jail, institution, huge disruptions, in my relationships, constant, passive and sometimes active suicidal ideation. And I think it's important to note that I grew up in a home affected by addiction, my father specifically. So at the same time that I'm going through all of this, and even before, my father is in and out of the hospital, detoxing himself from alcohol. I'm like picking him up off the floor and putting him in the car when I'm, a teenager, trying to get him to the hospital. So, and I say this because, like, that's kind of like, it was so tough on my mother, and she is an amazing and strong woman. And it just got, and I'm kind of trailing off here, but it got bad, obviously, about as bad as it could get. And I'd say, like, health wise, I think a lot of people don't talk about this, but like, I had hepatitis C, I had abscesses all over my arms. I mean, I was, probably weighed 120 pounds or something like that. So it got about as bad as it could get.
Well, and you said it now it's like gravely impacting the entire family too, right? Like your dad's dealing with his own substance use, your mom's trying to manage it all. And how do you also take care of yourself when you've got two people that are having, I mean, we're not talking about just mental health struggles. We're talking about serious medical complications that have lifelong consequences if not handled and treated appropriately. So that's, I mean, I can only imagine, like you said, your mom was dealing with a lot as you're also, it's hard to think outside of yourself though, when your addiction gets to be as big as it is. So that said, At what point did something change? Because you're not 120 pounds soaking wet right now. You're obviously in recovery. Like, where did this actually take a turn?
Yeah, so I look fondly on my entry into treatment. I think I had been up for 3 or something days, and I think I was using mainly cocaine, and I was coming down, and I had, taken some benzos and did some heroin, and I was going to the hospital to see my dad, who was there detoxing for the, 50th time, whatever. And, when you're on benzos, your judgment is very limited. And I was very reactive and not pleasant to be around. So at some point, some kind of altercation or argument happened between me and like a nurse or a doctor. I don't remember. But a hospital police officer there went and spoke to my mom. And she told him, all about me and our family. And he was like, listen, you need to get this kid committed somewhere. Like, you need to get him committed. And his name's Officer Brian Ellis, and he's amazing. So I ended up getting committed to a psych unit in Chapel Hill at UNC Chapel Hill. I was there for about 2 weeks. The first period I was in like a step down unit from the ICU because I had to be detoxed from benzos, and I had a pretty good history of seizures when I was detoxing from them. And so eventually the commitment was up, and I voluntarily checked into the psych unit to continue like my taper. And from there, my family, I have a massive extended family. My mom is one of 8 children, and all of my aunts and my cousins and my sister and everyone was involved, talking to me and trying to, get me to try to go to treatment again, which I had done in the past, but had never, I would use the day I got out. So eventually I agreed, and I said, listen, I'll try this one more time. And if this doesn't work, that's it for me. That's it for me here on this earth. And I just want to note something that I think is really powerful and how sick I was is I would be with my mom sometimes during my addiction, and we would be talking about it. And I would say, Mom, people like me don't get better. We just die. This is my destiny. I have chosen this path for one reason or another, and this is it. My destiny is to just die this way, and I'm okay with that at this point. I've totally destroyed everything. So in that moment when I agreed, I said, hey, I'll try this one more time, but I would love to go out somewhere in the woods. I cannot go into another room and talk about my feelings with a therapist or with a group of people. Can you please just send me out in the woods? And I grew up, spending time outdoors, riding dirt bikes, fishing. So I knew that would help me. And so my family came together and got some money together, and I got a scholarship to go to Four Circles Recovery Center here in Asheville, which no longer exists. And that's where it all started for me in recovery.
Wow. Yeah. And that's, I've had a few other guests over the years that were graduates from Four Circles and really attest like that model as being the game changer for them. It is, RIP Four Circles, but there are similar programs that exist across the US now. But good for you. I will just say this, to have the insight, like, look, if we're going to do this one more time, I'm going to give it a shot. It's got to be different, because what I know doesn't work is being inside a building with 4 walls, sitting in a circle, which no knock on that for some people, because that does work. But sometimes here's the flashback to 11, 12, 13-year-old rambunctious boys. They need strong, experiential, adventure-based therapy, because that's what works for them. It's not just like talking about it. It's like feeling it, experiencing it, and feeling alive.
Totally.
Okay, so Four Circles worked for you. Now here you are. How many years later? Like, what happened after Four Circles?
Yeah, after Four Circles, I was actually there while the program was shutting down. My last day, I had ended up being there for 60 days. I went into a structured sober living environment, and from there, I kind of did what people told me to, and didn't do some things that people told me to. But I kind of built and had built a community around me, whether that, was my community in the 12 step or in the 12 step rooms, or my community with the jobs I was working at. And that's kind of really what I credit my recovery with, is the relationships that I have these days. I have these people in my life that I don't even really need to tell them if I'm going through a hard time. They just know from talking to me. And that's like super meaningful, just having those folks. But anyways, I started working in recovery when I had 9 months of sobriety. I worked a direct care position at a PHP. And then I went back to the sober living and did some case management, house manager stuff. I did some construction in between there, some welding. And then eventually I got a job doing admissions for another program here in Asheville, and then started doing outreach and just kind of found my way through that world. And then, I took a new job working for an interventionist in August. So.
And feel free to, let's give a plug. So what are you doing exactly, and who are you working for now?
Yeah. So I work for Drew Horowitz and Associates. We specialize in intervention, transport, companion work. We do a little bit of coaching. One of the coolest services that we offer that kind of become known for is just crisis management for high acuity mental health situations when people are experiencing psychosis, whether that's substance induced or from a thought or a mood disorder. Go out and build rapport with them and keep them safe, help them get on some medication so they can enter into a treatment program.
Okay, I love what you're doing. And I also just love hearing kind of about your journey coming up here now, because it also feels a little bit full circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you are finally in a position where you are so grounded in your recovery. And like the important piece to that is these strong and healthy relationships that are supporting you and vice versa. And here you are now helping facilitate young people just like yourself,
Mm-hmm.
who are at that kind of rock bottom where you've got a hospital police saying, get your shit together, right? Like you need to get help now. And then that person is saying, okay, let's do it. Where do we go?
Mm-hmm. I'm so grateful for like what I get to do now. I couldn't imagine doing anything else with my life. Talking to these families that I get to talk to, that I have the privilege to talk to, and like one of their greatest moments of need, that they'll ever have in their life, as well as working with the clients. It's so meaningful. It fills my cup. And, even though it's my job, it helps me out a ton. And it's a gratitude machine.
Yeah. Which continues to fill us up in a way of actually going back to the quote where you said, like, people like me, we don't get better, we die. But like that gratitude is reinforcing and people like me can get better.
Mm-hmm. Yep. When I was in my active addiction, I genuinely did not think that people that did the kind of substances that I was doing got better. I thought that there was this line that you crossed, and after you had crossed that line, that's what the rest of your life was going to look like. And now I can tell people that there is no line there. You too can recover and lead a beautiful, meaningful life, surrounded by people that love you. It's just going to take some work. It's going to take being uncomfortable, just like being on this podcast. So, yeah.
Way to pull that back, full circle. Oh my gosh, that was awesome. Nicely done. That was like solid delivery. Okay. So yeah, way to continue to challenge yourself. Like you said, you got to put the work in. Okay, so let me ask this. And obviously you've kind of you've shared some advice. You've really actually said some pretty profound things, right? Like you said, thinking that there was a line, and once you cross that line, you can't ever go back. If there's something that you haven't shared yet, that would be helpful that you want to share now? Advice, suggestions, the inner workings of Sam Hayes and what people need to know? Or if you just want to highlight or reinforce something that you have already said, what else do you want to share?
I think I like to think about it as if like I was talking to my younger self, talking to my inner child.
What would you say?
I would say, I know that you think that you're a piece of shit, I know that you have no confidence. I know that you feel like you have no worth in this world, but the reality is that everyone does. And, I think that at this point in my life, that experience that I had through all those hardships is really like, it's such a huge part of my worth today. Not saying that, just being a human and being nice and all of that, but I realize now that all of that everything I went through is actually a huge asset now to me. Whereas in my addiction, I saw all of the horrible things that I did, the horrible ways that I treated my family as a massive liability on the balance sheet of life. So if I was like talking to that person, I would essentially say like, you are so worth it. Like you can have whatever you want in this world, but it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be hard, and you may slide back into those behaviors, but that doesn't mean that you can't still find yourself living a meaningful life full of recovery. And I would also say, just like reach out to someone, anyone, and tell them what you're going through. In my active addiction, all sorts of family members and friends would call me and try to talk to me. And of course, I was full of shame and like self-hatred, so I could never do that. But I remember moments when people were reaching out to me and I didn't. And I always wonder, what would have happened if I picked up that phone? Were they going to tell me that I was a piece of shit and I was making my family, upset and doing all these bad things? Or are they going to say, hey, Sam, I love you. Like, I know you're struggling right now, and I just want to let you know that I'm here for you, And I think that's what the majority of them would have said. So I kind of rambled there, but I would say like, just reach out to anyone.
I love it. I know that there are young adults listening to this, and there are also parents. Mm-hmm. So they are, again, probably experiencing all sorts of different emotions, just hearing you share parts of your story, and then also kind of hearing you impart some of this wisdom, which is profound. Quite honestly, sometimes it sounds so simple to say the things that come out of our mouth when we're on the other side, right? Because when we're in the thick of it, we put so much effort into hiding, avoiding, and not confronting, because sometimes it's just so much easier to mask and numb, even though in our heart of hearts we understand that it is making our own lives, our individual lives, harder. And for those who are in it and love us, right? And if they called us, they weren't calling us to say that, you suck. They're literally saying like, we're here, we love you, we care. And so I know that there are family members listening to this that are probably going to really resonate with this interview. And so I can't, like, this is my gratitude moment. I can't thank you enough for stepping into being uncomfortable, being on a podcast as a guest, but just being open to sharing. I know you've talked about your story, hundreds of times, but to do it now where it's recorded and it'll be out there for other people to listen to for, in perpetuity.
Yeah. Forever.
Forever. I just appreciate you. I really do. And I'm grateful that you're here and that you're willing to take a chance on that last treatment stay. And I hope more people are impacted by you positively still being in this world because of leaning into being open to your recovery journey.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And like, I know that like my mentors or, my sponsor, anyone would tell me that like, this is what you need to do, that you need to put this good out in the world, even though it's going to make you uncomfortable. So I'm, super grateful to like just share my story and like, to the families listening, like, I want to let you know that my family is better than it's ever been. I have a beautiful relationship with my parents and my sister, and I have 2 nieces that I get to show up for and hang out with. And your family can and will heal, but it takes the whole family to do that.
Well, I mean, your dog is also in agreement.
I'm sorry.
It's awesome. And on that note, yes, thank you, Sam, again for being here, for showing up. I'm glad that you were able to close that up too and fill us in on like the update of your status within your family based on your recovery journey. So I'm just going to put it out there that we'll obviously put your contact information in the show notes. So aside from, like contacting you to, which obviously I want them to connect with you, to like see how you might be able to help them through the organization that you work for, but also just to connect, right? You talked about some pretty serious stuff. And so for anybody that's reaching out, Sam's contact will be in the show notes, and don't hesitate to call him, text him, or make him feel uncomfortable by the outreach.
I appreciate that, Joanna. I'm happy to talk to anyone about anything. So feel free to reach out, guys.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guests for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email Joanna at lilleyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilleyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.